Do you know who TSR is or was? Have you ever heard of the term Thac0 before? Well, today I bring you the troll known as Thac0 the Clown. Well, let's start here with a little bit of know-how. I am your host Cindershadow, and welcome to the channel. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe because every subscription that I get to this channel helps immensely. And coming up closer to the end of the year, it would be nice to boost those numbers up a little bit. Anyway, today I bring you a tale of what's going on in the world of Wizards of the Coast, TSR, which is also known as Tactical Rule Study, and one of the new adventures that they brought forward with a interesting character named Thac0 the Clown. Well, Thac0 is a term that was coined back in 2nd edition AD&D, or 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons, long before this clown character ever became a new character or a new take on the term Thac0. And Thac0 stood for to hit armor class 0. That's the abbreviation of it. And what it is back in the days of 2nd edition D&D, you would each character would have a armor class, and that armor class was whatever that number was, and then you'd roll the die and you gotta equal that number with the Thac0 and everything like that. And once you did, then it was a hit. If you didn't do it, you missed. It was plain and simple. It actually was a way to streamline it. But with the addition of 3rd edition of D&D, it got rid of the 2nd edition and the way the stats worked and how everything worked. All these charts got thrown out the window and everything became streamlined. And if you guys are well known with the role-playing system of Rifts, it really mimicked the way that was, and it streamlined everything to a D20. You ultimately could turn around and quite easily play entirely of D&D with just using a D20. You can easily divisible by stuff by 6, and well, not really by 6, but by 2, and you could ultimately, if you do small tweaks, you could only run with a 20-sided die, much like this one here. This is more of a spin down from Magic the Gathering, but with the way D&D was going, that was where things happened. But today, I am here to talk about the new character, Thac0 the Clown, and why they're really clowning around with this one. So first of all, let's take a little bit of a look at the artwork for Thac0 the Clown. This isn't really that big part of the story. You know what? The artwork for the clown is very clown-like and very, very indicative of that, and kind of reminds me of Cirque du Soleil and the way that they really do envelop characters and how a clown is really portrayed. So this is Jason Rainville. He is the one that did the illustrating art for it. Thac0 the Clown for D&D's The Wild Beyond the Witchlight. 80 Kate Irwin was in the middle of a lot of work this winter, but I found time to paint my very first interior D&D illustration. At the first, I was disappointed it was a clown, but the personality won me over. So they gave him a personality and said, this is what we want. We want you to draw this and portray it as a clown. So they draw this older looking gentleman with a pipe. He's got the painted smile like a clown, but you can see his demeanor is just straight, there's no actual demeanor to him. He's just this curmudgeon. He doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't even seem to want to be there, but he's got the painted face on there. Very happy, very smiley, and very colorful, that kids would absolutely love to approach. Now, the new module or the new adventure Beyond the Witchlight, it starts off with a carnival and fae and all this other stuff. So it's very interesting that they would have this clown type character be the gatekeeper to enter the circus. It's very interesting in that sense. Appropriate enough, the name and its references from when I first played D&D. The brief was simple for me, evocative. Instead of a mean or sad character, I envision an absolute burnt out one. My personality title for this is Thac0's on break. So the art description that he was given: quarter page vertical Lido full body character, vinaigrette, Virginette, I guess that's it. This illustration depicts Thac0, a human clown who smokes a toy bubble pipe. He should also be smiling in his that's his illustration, but he has a smile painted on his face. That's all they gave him. So it's ultimately, what was the purpose of this? Why did he become this big clown, and why is he such a big deal? Now, this is back in September. I didn't really carry to look too heavy into this, but it wasn't until recently I know a few things that are going on behind the scenes with what's going on, and just seeing how things have been taken down. People are really beating down the way TSR has tried to come back to the market, and this is just one of those things that sits there and you go, well, what's going on here? So the RPG site put up a discussion forum on this. Thac0, the Clown of Witchlight, a venture, a dig at a pundit. I was enjoying reading the newest Wizards of the Coast 5th edition adventure, Wild Beyond the Witchlight. In preparation for my run with my 10-year-old daughter and her friends, it's a particularly kid-friendly adventure which is fanciful and can be completed with no combat of the group prefers that route. He goes on and lets us know a little bit more about it, but really the important notes for the adventure is the description that they give. Thac0, number 1, sits outside the door on an important location, blows bubbles with his bubble pipe. Number 2, does not get along with Burley, another guard who is younger and likely to try and help the adventurers. Number 3, Thac0 is the longest serving witch-like hand. So the idea of this is they're portraying him as a older person that's just worn out. He's just no longer effective at his job and no longer doing what he does. Nobody knows Thac0's history, and scarcely any dare to ask, for he is almost never speaks and harbors a malicious streak that is kept in check by Mr. Witch? Should not be Mistress Witch? One of the people who controls the carnival. Thac0 paints his face with a grin and puffs on a bubble pipe. Thac0 retires from performing and no longer stages his knife-throwing act due to an unfortunate incident that took place in the Big Top some time ago. Thac0 prefers not to talk, and when he must, he says as little as possible. He thinks everyone should mind their own business. If anyone tries to touch Thac0's pipe, they will lose a finger. That's pretty crazy. I don't know how you're going to lose a finger. I don't know where that comes across. And Thac0 cannot stand children. He thinks they're like roaches. Now, this to me, as I came across this and as I've seen stuff really bubble up here, I just having to look and go, this is, you're taking what was once a thing from 2nd edition D&D, and now you're turning it into a joke. First thing first, you're turning the idea of Thac0 into a clown-like person, or a thing that's no longer used, a very old school way, and even the demeanor that it has been painted here is a very curmudgeon. It's very old, and it's they're not really honoring what it meant to play D&D or meant to use that system. They're kind of, to me, it feels like they're pushing it aside. They used it. They even call this as Thac0 the Clown as a gatekeeper, and that's putting this barrier in front of you. And Thac0 was never about it being a gatekeeping for the game. It was a yes or a no answer that was quite easily roll of the dice, right? That's where the term of roll of the dice came along. And honestly, I just don't see this as a good representation of the way that they've portrayed this new character. Maybe it's honoring the old school of AD&D, but it really doesn't have that good sense of the way the lore or the source material actually held up and actually has gone through everything that the game has gone through to be where it is today. This is a 5th edition module, and honestly, when I first saw this and first was reading about it and stuff like that, I was like, are you kidding me? Did they really take this as a dig at the way the old school method was, at a dig of the way the old school AD&D was, something that I grew up with back in 89 to the years 2000s. You know what, we didn't jump on 3rd edition very soon, very quickly, but it wasn't until we all started kind of looking at it going, this kind of streamlines it, and it is, yes, an easier system to pick up. But like I said, it's rooted into like riffs and the superheroes, and it really streamlined into a D20 system and made it a lot simpler. Now, some people have called Thac0 as a controversial point of the game, and I never thought it was. I don't know where the controversy between Thac0 and rolling dice and simply hitting a number or not became controversial. When you first learn how to use it, yes, it's a little confusing, but once you learn how to use it, it actually generates better results and better attitudes towards the game. You either get a yes or no answer very quickly, where in a lot of cases now with the new D20 system, you roll your die and now you got to sit there and add this, add that. You got to add your weapon bonus. You got to add everything else. And this was quite simply, it was already all calculated for you, and now you could sit there and just roll the die and not have to do more stuff to it. It was literally a yes or no answer based on a random chance. And that's the gist of it. That's how Thac0 was. But now they portray this character going forward, and I was like, are they trying to take a knock at one of the original creators for D&D, or just take a knock at the way the system is and trying to show that the system was, it's no longer used, he's dried up, he's old, he's not. And that's the depiction of the character that I get. And so if you're taking that depiction of the character and adding it on to the way the old system was, it's like they're throwing it away and not respecting the way it was back in that day. Now, there's a lot of things that have been going on with TSR, and there's stuff to talk about still with TSR, mainly. If you haven't been around the channel, I have done a couple videos on this, and a couple things that flew under my radar because I didn't get to see them were statements that came out from TSR about the Twitter drama that happened. So then this Thac0 the Clown came up, and I sat there and I was like, wait, there's more here. What is going on? Because it seems that there's a lot going on behind the scenes between the different entities that happen to have TSR as theirs. Like there was at one point, there seemed to be 2 different TSRs, one that was sitting with Wonderfield and one that's TSR sitting under the control of Ernie Gygax. And there was a video that came out where people started getting up in arms about this other stuff, and then there was some Twitter posts that came back and really dug deep that TSR didn't seem to be uplifting, and they were seeming to be very conflicting, and so there was actually some statements that came out from TSR that I think I failed to cover, and that's another point that I'm going to put into this video. TSR appoints new public relations officer, responds to social media mismanagement. So there was some stuff going on with TSR, and now they have TSR the Game Wizards, which I believe is the rightful owners of the copyright at this point. I don't know the whole details about it. There is a slew of stuff that TSR has been involved with over its entire history of copyright lawsuits and stuff like that. And now we're looking at a point where Wizards of the Coast actually seemingly lost the TSR brand name back years ago. And then it was scooped up by Ernie Gygax and a couple of the original people that are out there. Now, this is from Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. This was posted July 9th, 2021. TSR has replaced the individual that was serving as both social media manager and information technology manager for TSR and the Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum. So there was a museum that I've seen stuff for this. This individual was also the social media manager for Giant Lands, Justin Lanashsa, and Ernie Gygax. These are quite important because at the time there was some individuals that were saying they got dusted up, and the person under Giant Lands came back and said you're disgusting, and then it got taken out of context. It blew up. If you see my previous videos on it, it blew up, and it was like, oh my god, what is going on with all of this? All posts on all social media accounts for TSR and Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum are considered invalid. This is back in July 9th. So anything that happened prior to July 9th was not the representation of TSR. All posts on social media accounts for Justin Lanashsa and Ernie Gygax should also be considered invalid because they had control of their social media posts. TSR is in the process of recovering the social media accounts of TSR, the Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum, and the personal Twitter accounts of Justin Lanashsa and Ernie Gygax. And this is from Michael Cave Hovelmare, the TSR Relations Officer, and he's actually reached out. So I've had a little bit of a conversation going on behind the scenes as well. Ernie Gygax, I wish to speak directly to the transgender community regarding this incident. The individual that was speaking to you on Twitter does not represent me or TSR in any way. Trans people are always welcome to play with us. Everyone is welcome at our table, and the contact here for Michael here as well. So that was one statement that came out, and then the second statement that came out was them cutting ties with Wonderfield, which I believe is actually run by Deinhardt. And he was the other entity that was part of all of this stuff. So this one also came out a few days after, July 12th, 2021, effective Thursday, July 8th. So this was the day before the last statement. Stephen Deinhardt and Wonderfield Inc. have been released from the licensing agreement with TSR. TSR was serving solely as the publisher for Wonderfield Inc. And publishing, in this sense, was a big deal. You guys look at comic books and you look at Wizards of the Coast, and they have all these publishing contracts. And you look at like Penguin House, they have their own problems right now with comic books and Marvel, all this other stuff going on there. But TSR, back when TSR was a namesake, when they made Dungeons and Dragons, it was all about getting the books to print and being the publisher of these books and getting them out there to everyone. Now we're dealing with such a situation where anyone puts together a monster manual or anyone puts together a story, but now you need to get it out to, you can get it published, put it on Amazon, and then it just disappears into the sea of everything. Where with like the name backing of Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast, D&D actually thrived forward and created this whole gigantic operation where people could access these things. And now we're back at square one, where TSR is actually going to be very soon, from what I'm told, they're going to be pushing forward and actually producing their own stuff. And we're going to see more stuff out of them. TSR did not conduct any sales with Wonderfield and was only the facilitator of Wonderfield Inc. product, Giant Lands, on the TSR website. TSR does not have any customer information or financial records regarding those transactions. any and all inquiries regarding sales of Giantlands First Edition box set pre-orders should be directed at Wonderfield Inc. Due to the circumstances, the playtest of Wonderfield Inc. product Giantlands, which was previously scheduled for July 21st and held at the Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and also broadcast on the Dungeon Hobby Shop Twitch channel, has been canceled. So this was something that was canceled. I didn't even hear about this at the time. TSR is an American game publishing company based out of Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. TSR will continue to work closely with individual game developers to assist them in bringing their products to life. TSR is also developing its own products internally, and that's what I'm talking about going forward. And this was from Justin Lanassa. So these two statements coming together, does this solve what happened on social media? Does this claw back what is actually going on? That is up to you to take this at face value. And in all honesty, from everything I've seen, they're wanting to move forward and wanting to move away from the situation that happened there. But then when I saw the whole stuff with Thac0 the Clown, I went, wait a second, what is going on here? There is something more going on here. To me, it looks like there is still people out there in the world, like from Wizards of the Coast, that are trying to take a dig at the source material for Dungeons and Dragons, and this clown, to me, is trying to say they're washed up, they're done. They were gatekeepers, and that's what they were, and that is not the case. I believe from everything I'm seeing and everything that I'm being told, everything I've heard and spoken about, that they're not going away anytime soon. I think there is bright things coming forward with TSR, and I think there are things like this that just need to be kind of called out and go, listen guys, I think you kind of made a mistake here, and I think it kind of needs to be scaled back a little bit, and honestly honoring the lore material and the source material in this case, which dates all the way back to Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, for Christ's sakes. I think that is more important than sitting here and everyone bickering and fighting and it's everything's being divided and being drawn down. And that has been my biggest thing here on this channel, is I do not like the divide that we are seeing in all hobbies and in all fantasy and all gaming. We are seeing this giant divide forming, and that's what needs to stop. We need to look at everything from an outsider's point of view, honor the source material, maybe get rid of the disclaimers that Wizards of the Coast put on some of these products. There's actually a petition for that. I will link that in the description. Because these were all source materials. At the time that they were created, there was nothing that was thought back then that was bad. It wasn't thought in the sense of today's lens. You look at these things in today's eyes, and looking back, you're going to find something every time that you think is inherently evil or was not humane or was something wrong with the products. And that's not the case. When things were created back in the 70s, it was your mind. It was open to interpretation, and it was everyone was welcome to play the games. And it was only the select few out there in the world that have now since 2016 have turn around and said everything of our past, no longer were they just geeks and people that were pushed aside from society in the first place. They were all evil. They were all racist. They were all prejudiced towards the way things are today, and that is not the case. Anyway, guys, if you did find this video informative, I hope you did. Do share it out. This is a look at the inside of what's going on some stuff here with TSR, this new Thac0 the Clown thing with Wizards of the Coast. And I think gaming as a whole has a whole new dimension that's going to be approachable, and everyone's going to be able to play it very soon, as long as we can turn around and forget the differences of the past and move forward with things that just don't draw these lines in the sand. Why do we got to draw these lines in the sand? That's the thing. And these lines in the sand are creating a divide, and we need to erase those lines. Anyway, guys, this is Proud Canadian Phoenix signing off. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you all next time. One more thing I had to add in here is, gamers never die, they only fade away.